at Genesis 16, the birth of Ishmael. All right, now, here's where we go back to Abram and Sarai, okay, his wife, who we know so far is barren, and they're of older age, and she's not able to have children. So this kind of gets reinforced, and it's a reminder for us here at the beginning of 16. But Sarai, Abram's wife, had no children. So, I pay a lot of attention to so, or because, or to, or so that. And I want to encourage you to do that anytime you're looking in the Bible as well. But this is really interesting. It says, she had no children. She's Abram's wife. So Sarai took her servant, an Egyptian woman named Hagar, and gave her to Abram, so she could bear his children. So you see Sarai now looking at a situation and kind of writing the story like, okay, well, I'm not able to have children. It's not going to happen. But this is what I have. I have a servant, and I'm going to give her to Abram so she can bear children. So that's how we're going to have descendants. So she takes matters into her own hands here. That's something we saw Abram do a little earlier when he told Sarai to lie, basically. But this is interesting. So it spells out the so. So here's the situation. So Sarai is doing this. She says, I'm going to solve this problem with my servant. And she gave Hagar to Abram so she could bear his children. And then she says, the Lord has kept me from having any children, Sarai said to Abram. So she's acknowledging, oh, okay, all things are from God. Well, this is what God gave me, the ability to not have children. Okay? And she addresses the Lord there, but she addresses him in this, he has kept me from this. Lord has kept me from having any children, Sarai said to Abram, go and sleep with my servant. Perhaps I can have children through her. She is my servant. She's mine. So this is like it's my child. This is how I choose to solve this, since the Lord has made it so I can't have children. Oh, man. Go and sleep with my servant. Perhaps. Man, those perhaps gets us in trouble sometimes, don't they? And Abram agreed. Just like a man, of course. I mean, if I have to, I don't know. Whatever. I'm not going to read into that. 3. So Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar the Egyptian servant and gave her to Abram as a wife. Notice again, you have more than one wife example here. Does that mean that it's okay? No, it doesn't. Doesn't mean anything that anybody does is okay. Like, God says what's okay and what's good in his sight, and it doesn't say that God says this is good or anything. I take note of those things because, like, sometimes you and I are going to hear, or maybe we have the question of, like, well, yeah, but they weren't supposed to eat this, or they couldn't have tattoos, or they couldn't have whatever, or should I be keeping slaves, or should I have more than one wife? Just because it's there doesn't necessarily mean that it was good, or that it was a good thing. And this is something we see out of a person that's trying to solve a problem with the means that she has, not inviting the Lord into it, the Lord who has kept her from having children in her sight. So I don't know why that's important to note. It's just something that I hear every once in a while, and sometimes I have those discussions with people where they don't necessarily comment, but they're like, I mean, are we supposed to be? And I'm like, no, I don't read it as that. So what are your thoughts on that? You can pop that in the bottom there. Anyway, so she gives him to, she took Hagar the Egyptian servant and gave her to Abram as a wife. This Egyptian servant that was hers, she gave her to Abram as a wife. And then in parentheses it says, this happened 10 years after Abram first arrived in the land of Canaan. So again, a lot of time has passed. And you had this timing where it's already shown that some time has passed, and then Abram's asking how, but this clarifies even more. This is 10 years after they first arrived in Canaan. So some time has definitely passed, and if Abram's been going, no, God's going to bless us. We're going to have lots of children, lots and lots of children. You're going to be having lots of children, honey, more than stars and dust. And she's just like, yeah, it's been 10 years. That ain't happening. The Lord's kept me from having kids, so I'm going to take matters into my own hands. I'm going to put her into your hands, and then she'll have the child, and it'll be like I had a kid. So just pointing those things out. So, verse 4. So Abram slept with Hagar, just like a man, and she became pregnant. When Hagar knew she was pregnant, she began to treat her mistress Sarai with contempt. So, she actually does get pregnant, and she's going to bear a child, and then she starts treating Sarai with contempt. Like she's not respecting her in the right ways, and that's a very interesting thing that a servant would do this. She's kind of, this is speaking to a lot of different things, I think. But let's continue to see how this plays out. Verse 5, Then Sarai said to Abram, "It's all your fault," which is interesting because this is her idea. But we'll see what happens. Now this servant of mine is pregnant, which is what she wanted to happen and what the plan was. But let's keep going. And she despises me. Okay, that's the thing that she doesn't like and that she didn't want and probably didn't expect. Though I myself gave her the privilege of sleeping with you. So, the Lord will make you pay for doing this to me, is how she finishes this. So now she's saying, the Lord's going to make you pay for doing this to me. This thing that basically I put into motion, whether it was the right thing or not to do. Like she's saying, like, I am wronged in this, I am dishonored in this, and you're going to be punished for this because you're doing this to me. And she's treating me in ways that she shouldn't. She despises me. She's treating me with contempt, and that is not how it should be. She is my servant, and so she's lost this ability. There's obviously lots of different emotions that are playing into this, and I think that that's really interesting, that at the end, when you see it kind of bookending this whole action and this whole plan getting formed, she says, the Lord has kept me from having any children. That's just something that that's noting something that she believes about God's character. And then at the end of this little, retort and come up, and she's trying to deliver to Abram in her upset and hurt nature here, she says, the Lord's going to make you pay for doing this to me. And that makes me think about or question her perception of God. That God is a God who keeps things from people, and God is a God who punishes people. He's making them pay. So she's having to pay for things. And she took things and she tried to solve this problem, but now here's what happened, and it's other people's fault. So I just want to notice those things about Sarai's character. And it's reading some things into it, but that's how it speaks to me, just kind of considering what we know about Sarai so far, right? So then at verse 6, Abram replied, "Since she is your servant, you may deal with her as you see fit." Like that's the solution. He's like, look, if you got a problem with her, you can deal with her however you want. Because he's like, I'm clearly not going to say the right thing here. Like, just do whatever you want. Just like a man. So Sarai treated her harshly, and Hagar ran away. So Sarai chooses the way that she sees fit is to treat Hagar harshly. You despise me, you treat me with contempt. Guess what I'm going to do to you? I'm going to treat you harshly, and I have the right to do it because I own you. And Hagar runs away. That's what Hagar sees to do. Now, this is interesting. At verse 7, the angel of the Lord found Hagar beside a desert spring along the road to Shur. Shur being S-H-U-R here. At verse 7, the angel of the Lord found Hagar. So you see an angel of the Lord finding Hagar who ran away beside a desert spring, okay, along the road to Shur. The angel said to her, Hagar, Sarai's servant, where have you come from and where are you going? Now again, there are times that you see angels and you see the Lord or you see God asking a question that I believe that they clearly know. But they're asking, and it's almost like sometimes like God coming to Adam and Eve and asking them things that he already knew. That was for accountability and for them to confess certain things and for them to recognize certain things. I think that this is a place where he's saying, like, where have you come from and where are you going? He's like asking her to almost consider these things. He's like, you ran away. Like, where did you come from? So what did you run away from? Okay, and where do you think you're going? You're a pregnant runaway slave. Like, I mean, like, what do you think? What are you hoping to accomplish here? I'm not trying to project that in the angel, but I mean, like, that's part of what makes me wonder about this exchange. When a messenger of God, an angel of the Lord, right, or God himself ask a question that if they're almighty and most high, I believe that he is most all-knowing and in all sovereignty. So all of these answers are already very freely there for him. So when these things are asked or presented here, I feel like, you know, they're asked for that character, that person to recognize something, and to own up to something, or to have something revealed to them that they might not have considered, to gain perspective for them. But and then there's also an extra layer for us as a reader. We heard about Hagar's situation and circumstances and what led her to run away. And now there's this pause of like, all right, she's getting visited by an angel of the Lord. Okay. So she matters to God, this servant, who's carrying a child of Abram, and then asks her to consider this. So we need to consider that too, this natural pause. At least I feel that way. And she replies, I am running away from my mistress, she replied. So I'm running away from her. Then the angel of the Lord said, return to your mistress and submit to her authority. So the angel, I love that, like, he says, where have you come from and where are you going? And her single answer for both is just, I'm running away from my mistress. That's where I came from and that's where I'm going. I don't really have a plan. I'm just running away. I love that the angel gives her direction now. Return to your mistress and submit to her authority. All right. Now this is very, very curious. Submit to her authority. At verse 10, it says, the angel added, I will give you more descendants than you can count. This always strikes me because it's like you're consoling this pregnant woman who's run away, and it's like, hey, go back to this person who's treating you harshly. Just submit to her. Here's the blessing. You're about to have lots more kids. Like, any woman that's gone through birth is like, whoa. That's not exactly comforting and a great reward. But culturally, like, that is a big reward, because that was, you know, unfortunately what you saw women as, or what they were regarded as, and especially when it comes to servants and them multiplying and adding to the value or the worth or the standing of their head of household or owners or whatever. You are now pregnant and will give birth to a son. You are to name him Ishmael, for the Lord has heard about your misery. There's a little asterisk next to Ishmael. It says, Ishmael means God hears. All right. So names are very significant in this, and this is an interesting name right there. God hears. For the Lord has heard about your misery. You're going to name him that because he's heard about your misery. This son of yours will be a wild one. More good news. He's going to be free and untamed as a wild donkey. Okay? Now, that could seem like this big curse, but think about how that sounds to someone who is a servant, who is a slave of someone. Like that, oh man, to be free, to be wild and free, like and just untamed. Nobody lording it over them. So that might have seemed like something that was inviting. He will be against everyone, and everyone will be against him. Well, that doesn't necessarily sound that way, but if you've got a rebellious, hurt heart, then that might be inspiring to you. So I'm just trying to look at different perspectives of how this is being received. But either way, this is being foretold. It's going to be a wild one, free and untamed as a wild donkey. He will be against everyone. Everyone will be against him. Yes, he will live at odds with the rest of his brothers. All right? You're going to have lots of kids. He's going to be at odds with all those other kids, this firstborn one, this one that means God hears. All right? And then, thereafter, at 13, Hagar referred to the Lord who had spoken to her as the God who sees me. For she said, I have seen the one who sees me. She recognizes that she was seen, that she was heard, okay? And that things were foretold to her, and she was given this command, basically, like, go back and submit to her. Okay, submit to her authority. And that's just so interesting that that's her takeaway. She referred to the Lord who had spoken to her as the God who sees me. The God who sees me. Like, no matter what her situations are, like, or that she's going to face here, that's how she refers to the Lord from that day on. The God who sees me. For I have said, I have seen the one who sees me. Later, that well was named Bir Lahai. I don't know how to say it. Bir Lahai. There's an asterisk next to that which says Bir Lahai means well of the living one who sees me. Well of the living one who sees me. And it can still be found between Kadesh and Bered. And then at verse 15, so Hagar gave Abram a son, and Abram named him Ishmael. Abram was 86 years old at the time. So lots of time has passed here, and then this solution kind of is pitched by Sarai, who just, it doesn't play out the way she thinks it is. Hagar runs away, there's contempt, there's this discord between those two wives of Abram. Abram saying, look, deal with her however you want, I don't care. Hagar running away, being seen by God, and then being told, like, go back, return, okay, and submit to her, all right? And you're going to have more descendants that you can count. Your child's going to be a wild one. Nobody's going to have authority over him. Like, he's going to be at odds with everybody. But she just takes away, well, God has seen me. And then, obviously, at the end there at 15, you see, so Hagar gave Abram a son, and Abram named him Ishmael. That shows that she returned, and that this son was born, and that he was indeed named Ishmael, just like the angel had said in verse 11. You will give birth to a son, you are to name him Ishmael, for the Lord has heard about your misery. And that Abram is 86. There's interesting here, there's a little asterisk. Where is that asterisk? Yeah, okay, look. Sarai said to Abram, it's all your fault. When I was kind of reading into the things that she sees, maybe in the Lord and his character of being this Lord that keeps things from people and that makes people pay for things. It's all your fault. Now the servant of mine is pregnant. She despises me, though I gave her the privilege of sleeping with you. The Lord will make you pay for doing this to me. In Hebrew, this translates to, let the Lord judge between you and me. So she puts this into God's hands, and whether she's phrasing it as, Lord will make you pay for doing this to me, or it's just, you read that as the Hebrew translation of, let the Lord judge between you and me, that character of God that she is noting, and that she is reacting to in this plan to handle descendants through Hagar, and in the fallout of the consequences of that, she refers to God as this judge, as this judging one, and as this one that's bringing this payment and this accountability and this punishment or this keeping from. And I think we've all kind of gone through those stages in our mind, or maybe we know people that kind of, that's what they know of God, or maybe as you're reading through, this is what you think of God at this point. But I want you to notice that perspective and that role, and that even of God Most High and Sovereign God, like those are things that point to God in an authority and a position and a power. but I want to note, the character of God that actually is in this, and how much of this has been driven by love and by faithfulness and by provision, and just the way that he addresses those that are faithful, and the relationship that they have. Without a relationship, God is just power and placement and rules. And I think that's kind of interesting to note. So those are the big takeaways from 16. You see again someone taking matters into their own hands, writing a story and trying to solve it themselves, and then the consequences of that, and then how they react to it, but also how God reacts to it and how God intervenes even in that fallout. And God makes a way, and God sends this angel of the Lord to see Hagar. And Hagar recognizes that she has been seen, and that this is a great blessing, and then things actually kind of get back on course, even though this wasn't necessarily the course that was laid out. This is the course that they kind of made, and now God's continuing to make a way even in that. So I think it's really cool to note that as well. That, I always say God is faithful whether we are or not. And I think that we're seeing a pattern of that. And I want to make note of that. And I hope you are too. I look forward to hearing things that popped out to you. Leave the comments or message me if you don't feel comfortable doing that. And I would love to talk to you about it. And I hope that this has been a blessing to you. And I'll see you next time.